Hello again, YouTubers. This is another episode of the Reefaholic, and this is a quick tutorial on how to replace the bearings on an MP40 pump using common tools you have laying around the house. Of course, we got to start this episode with a beer. Crack one open. First thing you're going to do is you're going to remove the spacer on the back side, and then you're going to take a screwdriver and pop off the sticker on the back of the dry side. It's funny, a lot of tutorials that you'll find on the internet tell you that you void the warranty as soon as you pull off the sticker. I find that funny because if it was on the warranty, I wouldn't be replacing the bearings. They would, period. There are 3 screws on the back. You're going to go ahead and remove all 3 of these screws. It is important to have the right size screwdriver. Too many people strip the heads on these things when trying to use a screwdriver that's too small or too big. So yes, we're using tools that you find around the house, but you really need to use the proper size screwdriver on any screws on this head. Simply slide the bell housing off, and we'll lay that aside, and now you have access to the motor assembly. Take a sip of the beer, and let's proceed. So you've got 3 more screws that you need to pull out. Once again, proper size screwdriver will make these things come out. I find the little stubby screwdrivers seem to work the best when you're working on the tabletop. You can get a good grip on them. You can put some force down on them when you're twisting them to make sure you can crack them puppies loose. These 3 screws are long screws. Go ahead and unscrew all 3. And remember, you're dealing with magnets here, so various things will stick to each other when you're trying to work around this project. Pop off the cover, safely put the screws aside. There were some spacers in there. Somebody had previously taken this particular motor apart, and they put 3 washers on one side and the spring spacer on the other, which turned out to be a problem. Basically, when you're putting it back together, it should be washer, spring, washer on the back side, and just a simple washer on the tank side. Now, to get the magnet off, a lot of people have had problems getting this magnet off. Again, I'm going to find out that you need a stubby screwdriver to do this because, as you can see, you can't necessarily wrap your hand around it and get a good grip on things. And not jamming the tip of the screwdriver into the windings of the motor is probably a good idea. So we're going to give this a try with the 2 stubbies. Nice big fat flat plate on the one side, and it cracks right open. Once again, this thing is magnetized, and it is a strong magnet, so you got to be careful with this thing. Luckily, that bell housing is aluminum, and it's not an issue. Now, there are wires attached to this side of the motor. You don't need to disassemble any of that, but you do want to be careful that you account for that spacer on that side. Just pop out the shaft assembly. This particular one, there's a few chips and scratches on this magnet. So again, you could tell someone's had this one apart. Now I'm going to grab a socket from my toolbox, which it happens to fit in very nicely. It's big, it's heavy. Pop 2 flat blade screwdrivers on either side. Give it a tap and fail miserably. So you'll see the only way that I'm going to wind up getting this done is going to have somebody help me hold on to the 2 screwdrivers. I'll make a few failed attempts before I finally get somebody to help me. Gently hold the 2 screwdrivers in, Tap it a few times and it pops right out. Maybe we'll tap it a few more times. There you go. You'll see people online that make various tools for taking these things apart, but I found that worked pretty well. Now, it is a magnet, so there could be some metallic dust and debris on there, some magnet shavings. Oh, time for another beer. This is rated as a 2-beer job, by the way. Don't normally drink the Coors Light, but, well, actually this would be Bud Light. Don't normally drink that, but happens to be what I have around. So you can see which magnet fits on which side. The bore hole on one is bigger than the bore hole on the other. So you'll find that it shakes on the one side, it therefore goes on the other side. Now I've seen a couple of videos where the person just pops these things right on with their hand. That just did not happen. I tried many times. Could not do it. Eventually had to resort to some brute force. But I found that the edge of the bearing was catching on the edge of the shaft. And in looking at it, it looked like the previous user had not done things in the best way possible and may have burred the edges of the shaft a bit. So I'll eventually take just a small diamond knife sharpening tool I had laying around, file the edges slightly to get off any burrs so that it fits right on. See, this is just me trying to get it on and then off again because it was not going on there smoothly, no matter how hard I tried. Oh, there goes that magnet. Oh, there it goes again. Freaking thing just sticks to everything. Blow some of the dust off here. She puts a little WD-40 on there. Got to make sure you wipe all of that off, of course. And it still doesn't want to go on. I tried a bunch of times. And then eventually I decided that it was time to just give that just a few passes with a file on the edge. And it gets it started just a little bit smoother. Now before you go pounding on the kitchen table, particularly when mine is made out of tile, you're going to want to get yourself a board or something like that to protect it. Plus anything with a hole in it is going to help you pound the bearings on, because you don't want to put too much uneven force on these bearings when pressing them on. See, just a few simple passes along the sharp edges to file down some of the burrs that are on the edge will make this go a hell of a lot easier. This little sharpener was actually from a kit for sharpening some drill bits, and it worked fine. Once again, you always want to keep all your metal shavings and dust off of everything so that you can get things done in the cleanest possible way. She puts a little more WD-40 in there. There you go. There is just no way that thing is popping on there. I think I need a bigger hammer. So I found that the hole in the end of this paintbrush was the perfect size for the shaft to fit through. And the wood being soft enough to keep any impact to a minimum on the side of the bearing. That heavy impact socket makes a nice little hammer too, but you could actually use a hammer. I was just too lazy to go get one. The one side took a few bangs to get it on there, but it eventually went on there pretty well. Lay the bearing on there, got a little spritz of oil in there. And a few love taps. Oops. Oh. Brilliant. This is the part where most people edit all of this out to make it look like it goes on really, really easy. Didn't happen in my case. Break out the trusty paintbrush again, knock a few things over. And this one went on even harder, as you could see from everything shaking, including the camera. Yeah, that's my heart monitor beeping in the background, by the way, if you hear that. Just kidding. And a few more taps. Maybe a few more taps. A couple more. Oh yeah, it just snaps right on there. I think if I do this again, I'm going to get a bearing press. Have to borrow one. I think Harbor Freight sells a small press for about $50. Still cheaper than going out and buying another dry side. So after watching me try to hammer in that bearing for the past 20 minutes, let's give this whole thing another good cleaning. Spray off any fines. Rearrange the table. Oh yeah, gonna rearrange it some more. Rearrange it some more. Bring that magnet close by because you can't have enough magnets near you when you're doing this. It's amazing how hard it is to get little magnet shavings off of a magnet. I probably could go outside and use the big compressor to get it off there. Oops. Oh, I meant to do that. Once again, magnet sticks to everything. Oops. Oh. Oh. Just one more item on here that didn't seem to want to go on fine. Seemed way too difficult to get this one lousy screw in. Clearly, I had to be doing something wrong. Once again, something that I could edit out, but I'd rather not. Am I sure I'm putting this thing in the right hole? Maybe it's some dust on there. Let's look at it again. Let's try it without the magnet. Oh, seems to go in the hole. Go figure. Yeah, maybe if I put the other side on, I can hold it better. Sure, that's what my intention was. We'll go ahead and put the big screws in here, because clearly that's the reason why the one screw wasn't going in. Oh, that's right, washers. Forgot all about those. What you don't see is that I had to take this entire assembly apart again later, because I realized that I put them back in the same order that I found them in, which was wrong. And of course, some more video that I could edit out, trying to find the stupid holes. That's better. Oops. If you put the magnet together and you find that you get a stall error, one of the things you can do is you can operate the motor assembly outside of the bell housing. And you could slowly loosen and tighten these screws to see if it starts binding at some point. That's a good indication that you have the washers in the wrong order or all on the wrong side. Some folks have said that there was different washer configurations and different items, but pretty much you want the spring washer between two regular washers. I would imagine that during factory assembly, that if they found a particular motor needed a little bit more space to stop from rubbing, that they would just put an extra washer in. But as this is the only MP40 I've taken apart, I can't necessarily comment for sure on that. Now back to the bane of my existence, this stupid screw. These magnets, by the way, are epically out of balance. You can run the dry side without that magnet in place, and it'll be almost perfectly quiet. The second you put that magnet on there, it gets noisy. Then you put it inside of a bell housing, which is bell-shaped, which does nothing but amplify the noise. And then, of course, Ecotech, in their infinite wisdom, decided to put a rubber drum skin on the end of it, so it makes it even louder. That's why you'll find that their new quiet drive doesn't have the same issues, because they got rid of the vacuous bell housing and the drum skin and replaced it with a piece of plastic. Once again, the two stubbies. The screws are just a little hard. I think there's a little Loctite on them from the factory assembly. I found out later that the magnet on the tank side is making more noise than the magnet that's on the opposite side. So eventually I went back and replaced that magnet with a better one. Rather than a $3 eBay magnet, I put a $12 eBay magnet on there. That was a joke. This is as good as they get. My intent was to replace the rubber housing on there, but they don't sell any parts, so I was going to cover it up with some shrink wrap, but my pin extraction tool did not come in. Oddly enough, to get the one that comes in a variety of sizes, you have to buy it from China. But it's a big $3 with free shipping and pretty much covers any size pin. So I'll wait the month and it'll show up, and then I'll put the heat shrink on then. Reassemble the product in reverse. Not sure why I picked that up and showed that to you. Maybe I just felt the need. Yeah, that little rubber doohickey, it's a pain. Line that up, pop some screws in there. I also found on a later reassembly of this magnet in trying to troubleshoot specifically where the noises were coming from, that putting a little bit of anti-squeak compound from caliper brakes inside the bell housing where these 3 screws go in actually helped reduce the noise just a little bit. It seems that just about every component that they build these things out of echoes and makes some sort of amplification of any minor vibrations and noises. I also found too that when you loosen these 3 screws while the pump is operating, it gets much more quiet. Not that you can leave it like that, but it definitely goes to show how the bell housing amplifies noise. I was considering at one point stuffing a little bit of fiberglass insulation in there, or maybe even a couple of blobs of silicone to just stop the vibration. But then I figured I probably wouldn't be able to get the damn thing apart again if I had to. I'm still considering finding some sort of heat-resistant wedge material to jam in there to stop the vibration of the bell housing. Again, the only reason why I took this cable off is because my intent was to replace or cover up all of the split boots with some shrink wrap. But that didn't happen. So there you go. It was a 2-beer job. Just common household items found around the house. Plenty of information on Reef Central. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. Thanks, guys. Comment if you want.